Hello friends, how are you? Welcome to my channel. So let's start the today fanfiction story. What if Deku Battle Trials, Clash of Heroes? Let's start the story. Class 1A, the next day. So, as it turns out, there are only a select handful of students in 1A that actually remembered Yui was still a high school, palace of learning. Most of the class had, wrongly, come to the conclusion that their days at the famous hero institution would be filled with training, mock battles, and strategy and analysis. Now, while they did have those classes, they were only half their schedule. The other half was split between regular school subjects, English, mathematics and physics, the history of quirks, and civil and criminal law. The silver lining, all members of staff were pro-heroes. Their course, the hero course, was filled with the best heroes in Shizuoka, both limelight and underground heroes. General education and the management course was run by pro-heroes that led double careers in Shizuoka, and the support course was run by Power Loader. Even the cafeteria was being run by the cook hero, Lunch Rush. Izuku and Akira had actually jumped in excitement when the man gave them their food and immediately asked for his autograph. And while initially taken off guard by the request, the chef happily complied. Right now, however, the students of 1A simply sat and idly chatted with one another while waiting for their teacher to arrive. The main conversation going around the room was on who the teacher would be. They hadn't been informed of that yet. I'm just saying. Kaminari started, hands up in the air in mock surrender. Switch would be a great teacher and he'd be more than capable of keeping us all in check. Jiru shook her head. That would be a solid argument if Switch operated in Shizuoka like the rest of the staff here. He works in Saitama Prefecture, she argued, pulling up a picture of another hero. But Sparks, on the other hand, definitely fits the bill. Hagakure huffed. I don't care who it is anymore, I just want to start our hero class already, she exclaimed, her body glowing lightly as she sighed. This is our first one. The bell hasn't even rung yet, Hagakure. Ajira replied with a small laugh, pointing at the clock. We all just got here early out of excitement. The bell suddenly rung and all conversation ceased as all the students entered their seats immediately. A buzz of excitement filled the room as they silently waited for their new teacher, and when they heard the footsteps down the hall, they almost burst. H-a-h-a-h-a. A very familiar laugh rung out from the other side of the door and all the students gasped. I am. The door burst open and the class actually did jump out of their seats as their suspicions were confirmed. Coming through the door, like a normal person. He didn't, but the students didn't care about that. Holy crap, the rumors were true. All Might's actually our teacher. It's not a PR stunt. He emanates such power. I've never seen this hero costume before. Kiro, what is it? The last exclamation was actually a valid question. Instead of his usual hero attire, All Might was wearing a white button-up shirt with his sleeves rolled up tucked into a pair of black suit pants held up by a brown belt. Overall, he looked halfway between a teacher and an incredibly large bouncer. Yes, it is I, All Might. I hope you're all enjoying your first days here at Yui, the large blonde exclaimed, walking up in front of the podium. As for that last question, young Asui, while I can wear my hero outfit, I thought dressing more formal would be fitting as your hero course teacher. He laughed at the widening of their eyes and nodded. Yes, I will personally be overseeing your training alongside other staff here at Yui. We will build up your skills to become heroes through rigorous training and hellish conditioning. All Might pulled out a card and presented it to the class. And today, your first test shall be a battle trial. A battle trial. Bakugo's ears were now wide open. Now I'd like to hear more about that. The murderous grin on his face and the tone in which he spoke did not inspire any confidence in the gathered students. But they tried to look for the positives. At least he's enthusiastic. Yes, young Bakugo. The class thought they heard Bakugo squeal but threw that out of their minds as soon as it entered. However, I can't have you training to be heroes without these. All Might pointed to the wall as several briefcases shot out of it. Your hero costumes. Our costumes. We're getting them already. Holy shi. Your costumes have all been made to the specifications you all requested before the semester started. All Might exclaimed as he cut off the last comment. Now, let's not waste any time. Put on your costumes and meet me at ground beta. The entire class was more than enthusiastic to follow the man's instructions, and they all grabbed their briefcases from the wall before rushing out. They were so loud in their excitement as they rushed down the hall that a few of the older students looked out of their classes with smiles on their faces as they heard them. Ground beta. Despite being the first out the doors and the first to get changed, Izuku and Akira were the last of the class to arrive at their training grounds. The reason for this, the two teenagers couldn't help but freak out at their costumes and finally being able to feel like true heroes, which led to them taking a 5-minute break to calm themselves. When they finally did arrive, they were met with confused looks from a few of their classmates. Izuku wore a pair of forest green combat pants tucked into red, plated shoes held up by a red belt and a similarly colored waist cape. His top consisted of a black undershirt covered by an open green jacket that were completed by a pair of white gauntlets, gloves. Finally, finishing the costume, he wore a diamond-shaped steel mask with 8 holes, a green-tinted visor, and a pair of red headphones. The greenette looked like a mix between an aviator, hero, and vigilante all at once. There was a reason for it though. His aviator look was based off of Hawks, and the hero design was one he had been working on for years, though the gloves were a new addition that he added after learning he could create wind flashes with his quirk for better control. And the waist cape, personal sense of flair. Then there was Akira's costume. The black-haired teen wore a sleeker outfit with a casual ninja vibe to it. He had a pair of black combat pants tucked into similarly colored combat boots held up by a brown belt with a number of supplies in it. His top was covered by a tight, sleeveless shirt that was tucked into his pants and had a brown strap across it which secured his staff and finished the costume off with a pair of black, fingerless gloves with metal plating connected to a pair of brown arm guards. Overall, both Izuku and Akira looked like they were already heroes with the outfits they had chosen. "Midori, is that you under there?" Mina asked as she bounced up to the green-haired teen. "You look really good." And she meant it. The open jacket let her see his 8-pack even under the singlet he had on. Damn, unaware of her thoughts, Izuku pulled his mask down and waved at her. "Yup, it's me," he exclaimed with a smile, looking at her costume with a visible blush. "I think your costume is cool as well, it's very exotic." Mina didn't miss the blush on his face and was sure she had one of her own of equal pigment at the greenette's comment. "Thanks, Midori, you're really sweet." Off to the side, Akira was having a similar situation with Ochako. Though, one could say he was doing much better as the two weren't blushing and apparently seemed to know each other already. "Well, this is certainly a sight for this old man's eyes," All Might said, regaining the class's attention. "It warms my heart to see that the future of Japan in the hands of you children." His statement gathered large smiles and embarrassed blushes from the class, and they all stood just a bit taller. "Now, how about we get this combat training started?" The class shouted in approval, but someone had a question. "All Might, sir." It was Ada. "This training ground seems to be similar to the mock city we participated in the entrance exam. Does this mean we will conduct urban battles?" "Nope," All Might exclaimed, not missing a beat. "This is Yui. I'm going to be moving you newbies 2 steps ahead." The blonde directed the class's attention to the buildings around them. While it's true that a large amount of villain fights on the news are shown to take place outside, the most dangerous take place indoors. Underground lairs, drug trafficking, hostage situations. The truly dangerous villains are the ones who stick to the shadows. Kirishima put up his hand with a smile. "So, are we going to be doing indoor battles then?" He seemed very excited at the prospect, as did the others around him. "Yes indeed, young Kirishima," All Might responded. "Today you shall partake in an indoor 2 versus 2 battle." Sue tilted her head as she raised her hand. "Hero, isn't this a bit much for our first class?" She was just a bit surprised by the level the class seemed to be. "The best experience you will gain, young Asui, will come from the battlefield." All Might, on the other hand, seemed to disagree. "Now, let me explain the scenario for you all." The man reached into one of his pockets and pulled out a script, gaining a number of chuckles from his students that he dutifully ignored. "The dastardly villain team have manufactured and hidden a doomsday device in their hideout, and the heroes have arrived to stop them. The winner is decided if the heroes either capture the villains and recover the device, or if the villains capture the heroes and time runs out." Once more, Ada raised his hand high in the air. "Sir, how will we be selecting the teams for this exercise?" he inquired. "Will we choose amongst ourselves, or will you choose based on our quirks?" "Neither," All Might exclaimed as he presented a box to the class. "The teams for today's exercise shall be chosen by lottery." Ada titled his head in confusion. Is it the best way to pick our teams? He seriously doubted that would create fair teams for everyone. What if one team severely outpowers another? Before All Might could answer, Akira addressed the blue-haired teen. "I mean, it kind of makes sense if you think about it," he started, getting the rest of the class's attention. "Pro heroes have random team-ups all the time, and not all villains are going to be evenly matched to you." Izuku nodded as he continued for his friend. "This is more than likely to test us on our ability to adapt to whatever situation we find ourselves in." "Ah, I see." Ada nodded at the logic presented to him and performed another one of his perfect bows to his teacher. "Forgive me for my interruption. All Might, sir." All Might simply gave him a thumbs up and flashed him a smile. "Don't sweat it, young Ada," he exclaimed heartily before once more presenting the box to everyone. "Now let's get started." At the end of his proclamation, half of the students came up one by one to pick out a name before the box was empty, leaving us with these teams. Indoor Battle Trial Lottery Teams. Team A, Izuku Midoriya and Mina Ashido. Team B, Shoto Todoroki and Mizo Shoji. Team C, Momoye Urazu and Tenya Ida. Team D, Katsuki Bakugo and Akira Hikaru. Team E, Yuga Aoyama and Ochako Uraraka. Team F, Rikido Sato and Koji Koda. Team G, Denki Kaminari and Kyoka Jiru. Team H, Fumikage Takoyami and Tsuyu Asui. Team I, Mashiro Ajiro and Toru Hagakure. Team J, Ijiro Kirishima and Hanta Siro. Akira and Bakugo were both audibly groaning and were bickering as they stood next to each other. There were also a few light elbows thrown around. Izuku, on the other hand, had put his mask up so that his blush couldn't be seen when Mina bounced up to him. "What are the chances, Midori?" Mina asked as she poked him in the chest, unknowingly putting butterflies in his stomach. "Looks like we're just meant to be." Izuku coughed but kept his composure. "I guess so." Great, now they were both blushing messes. Luckily, All Might saved them by calling out the first two pairs. "All right, young heroes, the first two teams to compete shall be." The large blonde pulled out a single ball each from the villain and hero boxes before presenting them. Hero team against villain team D. Bakugo had lost his sulk and was now pumping his fists in the air at the prospect of getting to fight, and therefore beat Izuku. Yes, 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 yes. Akira was also pumping his fists in the air. Yes, 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 though he was happy at the thought of Izuku beating Bakugo's ass. Villain Team D, you shall have 5 minutes to hide your bomb in one of the rooms and set up your defenses, All Might said, snapping the two teens out of their stupor with a smile. Hero Team A, you shall have 5 minutes to plan your operation, now go. And as the two chosen teams walked off to their positions, All Might took the rest of the class to the ground beta observation room. Ground beta streets. Mina looked at the building she and Izuku were going to be raiding before deciding she had no idea what she was doing and decided to ask the greenette if he did. "Hey, Midori, what kind of plan do you got cooking up in your brain there?" However, she was met with silence. "Midori." The girl turned around to see the greenette fixed on the holographic floor plan, and he was mumbling to himself. They'd both be arguing over where to put the bomb, but they'd both want to put it on the 3rd floor. Izuku zoomed in on that part of the building and the rooms on the floor. Akira would go for something with the least amount of entrances so that he could guard it, but also a room with enough space to hide in. So, Midori. Mina suddenly snapped her fingers in front of the greenette's face, causing him to jolt up. "Hi. Whoa, nice height, Midori." Izuku quickly righted himself but blushed in embarrassment. "Sorry about that, Ashido. Guess I got a bit too focused there." He sagged lightly at the end of his statement, something that did not sit well with Mina at all. "Hey, don't worry, that's completely fine," she said, patting him on the back. "I actually think it's kinda cool that you're so into this. Really shows how much you want to be a hero." Her statement caused a small smile to form on the greenette's face and he stood up a bit taller. "Thanks, Ashido," Izuku said before getting back to their task at hand. "Anyway, you asked for the plan, right?" At the pink-haired girl's nod, he brought up the floor plan. "It's a pretty simple one, but we have to stay close to each other, side by side, back to back. We do this together." "Oh," Mina smiled sweetly and playfully at the plan. "If you want to spend time with me, you can just say so." Izuku smiled back but shook his head. "All right, first we'll have to deal with ground beta mock building, 3rd floor." Bakugo stared out the window of the room he was currently in, watching the mock city and thinking. He had made it to Yui like he wanted to. Izuku and Akira making it as well, however, wasn't expected. Well, the blonde would admit, very begrudgingly, that Akira would have always passed the exam, but Izuku, his sudden quirk was just baffling. They obviously weren't friends, but they weren't on the worst of terms either, unless it wasn't as sudden as they said it was. Akira, the explosive blonde, was actually able to get the other teen's attention with that one. How long has he had his quirk for? Akira heaved the faux bomb down from his shoulder and placed it on the ground before turning to Bakugo. "What?" he asked, sensing that he probably wouldn't like this conversation. "Duh." Bakugo paused at that name and shook his head violently. "Izuku, how long has he had this quirk for?" "Since we were kids. Middle school." Was he just a late bloomer? There was a hidden question in there, but Akira didn't know what it could be. "Well, Katsuki, if we're being honest with each other," he started, grabbing a number of wooden plates and metal scraps before placing them around the bomb. "Izuku is a late bloomer, 10 years late." Bakugo seemed content with the answer, but it also created another question for him. How can he be 10 years late? His quirk doesn't even fit with what Auntie Inko has. Akira actually considered telling the blonde the truth, if only to end his questions, but wisely chose against it and instead shrugged. "To answer your first question, fate just decided that after saving your ass from the sludge, he deserved one." It wasn't really a lie when he said it like that. As for your second question, quirk strand mutations are always random. His heart started glowing as he let his quirk calm him down. Remember Koro? His parents had fire and water quirks and he somehow got kyber knives. Quirks just change sometimes. Either the blonde had gotten all the answers he wanted or was done with the conversation as he started to walk off. "You know where I'm going," Bakugo said before Akira could ask. "I've got to get my answers from him." As he walked off, Akira shook his head. "Don't get too hurt, they might make me heal you," before going back to building up a barricade for the bomb. What was that other girl's quirk again? Villain Team D, your 5-minute defense time is now up. All Might suddenly called out on the PA. System, Hirotima may now enter. Second floor. Izuku had felt danger sense warning him of Bakugo as soon as he entered the building and felt it somewhere high up, so the greenette just flew himself and Mina to the second story before bursting in through the window. Right now, Izuku was leading the pink-skinned girl based on what danger sense was telling him. It told him to back away. Mina was actually the first to act and pulled Izuku back just before the two turned a corner, narrowly saving him from one of Bakugo's patented explosions. Must have lost focus, Izuku thought before smiling at Mina. Thanks for the save, Ashido. At the girl's grin and thumbs up, he leaned in to whisper something to her. Got it. Mina nodded with a determined expression before running off. Kick his ass, and leaving that last comment as she turned the corner. A comment that didn't sit well. Honestly, a lot of things don't sit well with him. With Bakugo, however, he simply shrugged it off since it wasn't important right now. I'm actually glad she left. The blonde started, shaking his hands and jumping on his toes. We both know there's a score to settle here and I've been training my ass off twice as hard since you got on that stupid sub board. I've been training my ass off since you decided me being quirkless meant we couldn't be friends. Izuku saw his comment had an effect on Bakugo for a moment before the blonde schooled his features and lunged forward with a right hook. Same ol' Katsuki. What the hell og? Bakugo didn't even have enough time to be surprised when Izuku had suddenly grabbed his arm and used his own momentum to slam him into a wall. Shit, I'll admit this, Bakugo. You are a battle genius, Izuku said as he charged up 10% of one for all throughout his body. But you've got to stop leading with that right hook. A villain is going to capitalize on that one day. The explosive blonde took the comment with a grunt and started shaking his hands again. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Before suddenly shooting forward, surging above Izuku and aiming his palms down at him. But I like to focus on the now. The greenette sighed as he got into his stance. Alright, let's do this. Izuku quickly executed a backhand spring just as the explosion left Bakugo's palms, narrowly dodging the attack, before running up and jumping off the wall to kick the blonde in the face. Izuku's praises from before though were not ill-founded and Bakugo was able to create an explosion in front of him to force him backwards, making Izuku miss. The greenette, however, did not want to give the explosive teen any room to breathe and immediately pushed himself into Bakugo's personal space to force him into hand-to-hand combat. Luckily, Izuku's plan worked and he soon found himself efficiently pushing his opponent back with his controlled strikes. And while the blonde put up a good fight, it wasn't good enough as Bakugo soon found himself being sent into a wall after Izuku hit him with a double backfist strike. Shit, that one hurt a lot. Bakugo pulled himself out of the wall before taking a deep breath, ignoring the amount of pain he felt in his chest. Hand to hand it is. This time, Bakugo shot an explosion backwards to send himself surging forward with a kick. Izuku blocked it, but when they entered their fight again, he was pleasantly surprised to find the battle just the slightest bit more even. Bakugo had adapted quickly to what he was dealing with and wasn't sending his quirk forward to do the damage. Explosion was exclusively being used to help him dodge or to enhance the speed of his backfist. Izuku was still winning though and knew that leading the blonde on wasn't helping anyone, so he quickly threw him back again with a double fist. Did my hands just break? And was surprised at the cracking feeling he felt on his knuckles when he did so. However, he couldn't think on that for long as Bakugo had once more gotten up. You remember how my explosions work, right? The blonde was hunched over, holding his chest and taking deep breaths but quickly straightened himself. It's all about my sweat. More sweat means more boom boom. What's he playing at? Izuku raised his eyebrow at the blonde's explanation of his own quirk but was mostly concerned with how hard danger sense was beating in his head. Where is the... Oh, Bakugo saw the realization in Izuku's eyes and nodded before lifting up his gauntlet. If the support company, or whatever support course schmuck that made this, decided to actually listen to my request, then this baby should be stored up with all the sweat from this fight. He had a calm expression on his face as he put his finger into a pin. Izuku could sense that Bakugo had no shred of hesitation within him and quickly charged one for all up to 40% before reeling his arms back. Not good. Even All Might could sense the danger as he quickly put his mouth up to the palm mic. Young Bakugo. If you use that however, the man couldn't even finish his sentence when Bakugo pulled the pin. A large explosion was sent down the hall as a result and Izuku sent forward his fists just before they reached him. This created a large amount of dust and smoke that obscured anyone, even the cameras, from seeing the outcome of the clash. Outside of the smoke field, Bakugo waited with a calm, flat face for a few moments before sighing. I guess I was wrong. He turned around to walk away but was immediately met with a blob of a strange liquid. Og, fuck. My eyes. And it burned. Huh. Take that, boom boom. Mina exclaimed, spinning around and kicking Bakugo in the face as he was temporarily blind. The blonde was about to randomly set off another explosion with his gauntlet. But Izuku suddenly shot out of the smoke and sent a backfist right into Bakugo's spine. He once more heard a crack but didn't have the time to think on it as Mina wrapped the falling, unconscious blonde up in capture tape. Then All Might's voice came back on the paw. Bakugo has been captured and therefore eliminated. Do you think that was a bit much? Izuku asked with a worried tone. The crunch he felt suddenly processed in his head and he realized he had probably broken multiple of Bakugo's bones. Mina, however, shook her head furiously. A bit much was the explosions from those gauntlets, she replied, grabbing Izuku's arm and dragging him away. Let's go. We only have a few minutes left. Third floor. Akira stood in front of the fortified bomb with his metal staff, spinning it idly as he waited for Izuku to kick in the door. He knew the greenette wouldn't bother being quiet in this situation. His assumption was proving correct as the door suddenly blasted off its frame and flew towards him. Instead of dodging, however, the black-haired teen let his quirk run throughout his body and stabbed his staff forward with one arm, splitting the door in half around him, and was met with the sight of Izuku and Mina when the dust cleared. I knew Bakugo would lose, but I didn't expect it to take that long. It was a buried compliment, but a compliment nonetheless. I suppose I should thank him for that. I was able to set up more defenses because of the prolonged fight. The black-haired teen was right. He had actually chosen the biggest room on the floor and had spent the entire match so far building up 3 walls of wood and bended steel around the bomb. Ashido, take the walls down and grab the bomb. Izuku knew that Akira made that wall with Mina's quirk in mind and was ready to get her all the time she needed. I'll take Akira. Mina nodded and stood back as she waited for an opening. It came fast. One for All ran at 20% through Izuku's body, and a large portion of Akira's energy circulated through his as they rushed towards each other. The black-haired teen swung his staff down as soon as they met, but Izuku dodged around it before kicking out, knocking him back. Akira quickly righted himself mid-air, landing himself on the wall before pushing back off again towards Izuku. This time, he began to spin his staff around him as he advanced and struck out at Izuku in a wild pattern. The greenette actually found himself hard-pressed to keep up with his friend's speed with the staff and took a plentiful amount of hits to the face and side. All right, Bujutsu isn't working, Akira suddenly said, sending Izuku back with a powerful spin kick to his solar plexus. Batons it is, before pulling his staff apart into 2 batons. A mistake. Izuku let Akira get close and did his best to parry all of his friend's strikes until he saw an opening. That opening came quick in the form of the black-haired teen trying to slam down one of his sticks on the greenette's head. Quickly dodging out of the way, Izuku forced the baton into the ground before letting loose a hard backfist into Akira's face, staggering him before he kicked him away. I know that, in our decade of friendship, I have always been more hero nerd than you. Izuku started, picking up the baton he made Akira drop. But are you really ripping off the lifeline hero, Stim's patented Stim Staff TM? Akira kipped up and swung around the single baton he had. It's an effective design and I'm good with a bow staff. He got into a crouch as his quirk began to pour out more energy. But this works too. Izuku also crouched and put his left arm out in front of him, fist curled up, while his right arm went behind him, holding the baton. Bring it on. The black-haired teen rushed forward again and the watchers in the observation room were then made privy to a martial arts battle that looked right out of a movie. Each hit was fast and precise, aimed for a part that the other teen knew would hurt the most. Every parry was instantly followed up by an attack that would also be parried back and forth. Akira dodged under Izuku's overhead swipe and used his momentum to kick at his arm, knocking the baton out of his arm and into a wall. Izuku, not wanting to be outdone, he could be petty sometimes, let Akira try whack him right in the face before grabbing it with his mouth and ripping it right out of his friend's hand. Well, alright then. Akira backed up and looked back at the wall to see that Mina was almost through to the bomb. You've basically won. However, even knowing this, the black-haired teen didn't want to go out without a bang. But how's about we finish this off right? He lifted his hand up as the full power of his quirk ran through his body, an action Izuku was eager to copy. We've always gone full out against each other in our spars. The greenette threw away his baton and got into a stance. But we've never had a clash before, have we? Before letting the 40% of one for all he could control out through his own body. Boys, I don't think that All Might once more tried to take control of the situation before it could get out of hand but was too late. The 2 teens had surged towards each other before the large blonde could even start to speak, their quirk's power's mere presence causing the building around them to shake. Then they clashed. A large shockwave burst out from where their fists met and they struggled against each other for dominance. Akira's quirk was pushing out wave after wave of energy through his body while Izuku felt all the energy of one for all he had active rush into his right arm and right arm only. The effect was immediate. Akira's arm bent in a way it absolutely shouldn't, nor anyone's for that matter, before the wind pressure behind Izuku's punch sent him flying out of the building. And the building after that, and the building after that. Izuku's eyes widened at the sight and he frantically depowered one for all before rushing out of the hole he had created. Akira. He quickly activated float and flew over the buildings his friend had crashed through before finding a very bright golden light in a large crater in the middle of the street. Akira. The black-haired teen in question was just looking up at the sky as he let his quirk fix himself. Damn, I was so close to winning that as well, he said to no one in particular before Izuku appeared next to him. Oh, hey, Izuku. Akira, are you okay? The greenette was hesitating between touching Akira's arm and staying away from him. I didn't think it'd get that bad. I swear, I would never have. Dude, Akira put up a hand before his green-haired friend could continue. Don't worry, you just snapped my arm. That's nothing I can't fix. He sat up before showing said arm that was snapped. See, good as new. His eyes shifted to the building and the sight of Mina holding the bomb in victory. A shame I lost though. Mina smiled and gave Akira a thumbs up from where she was. Nice match, Hikaru. Are you good? She remembered the black-haired teen saying he could heal, so she didn't think what just happened was that big a deal. I'm fine, Ashido. Akira shouted back, waving his arms. My whole body is healthier than when we started. Mina decided to be a bit mischievous at that statement. I meant your ego, but I guess you being okay is good as well. The black-haired teen couldn't even retort as All Might's voice came back on. While I do not condone what just happened, you all seem to be fine. Therefore, a firework shot up in the air from the observation tower, showing off the letter H in bright gold. Hirotima wins. Mina threw her hands up in victory again at the announcement, but Izuku stayed silent, staring at the ground without saying a word. Bakugo. Akira. The sounds and the feeling of bones cracking against his fists echoed in his ears and he felt himself become dizzy. One for all is a dangerous power. Akira noticed his friend's out-of-it look and quickly snapped his fingers in front of the greenette's face. Izuku, you in there? He waved his hand in front of him for a few moments before deciding to be a bit more dramatic. Izuku, and slapped him. Oh, Izuku snapped his head back up in shock before realizing Akira was staring at him. Oh, sorry, did you say something? He sheepishly rubbed the back of his head with a forced smile. Guess I zoned out again. You sure did, Mina exclaimed as she suddenly arrived behind them, tapping the greenette on his head. Now let's get going already. All Might wants us back on the observation room so the others can have a go. Observation room. Upon their arrival at the observation room, Izuku, Akira, and Mina were all met with high levels of praise by the majority of their classmates. Izuku and Akira were especially applauded by the guys for what they described as the most manly, insane, mind-blowing, ultimate, overpowered showdown they had ever seen. It felt like I was watching one of those old kung fu movies, Anjiro exclaimed, taking a look at Akira's staff. Do you two do martial arts at all? Because your movements were way too disciplined to be thought of otherwise. Kirishima nodded. It was totally manly. Bakugo as well. He looked off down the hallway with slight worry. I hope he's okay. I really want to get to know him and fight him. Akira was about to advise against that when Ochako walked up to him and grabbed his arm. Holy crap, Akira, the brunette exclaimed, stars in her eyes. I know you said you two were powerful, but that was absolutely crazy. Mina nodded and jabbed Izuku in his side. Yeah, Midori. She smiled at him with her tongue out. You totally rocked Bakugo and Hikaru all by yourself. Indeed, he did, young Ashido. All Might exclaimed, walking up to them. And for that reason, I see it fit to name him MVP for this match. It should go to Ashido. And once more, All Might is cut off from saying anything as Izuku raises his hand. I captured both of them, yeah, but without Ashido we wouldn't have secured the bomb in time. Izuku had seen the clock when he went for his final clash with Akira. He wouldn't have had enough time to grab the bomb. So, Ashido gets MVP. The large blonde teacher was considering on saying otherwise but knew how adamant Izuku could be. Very well then. So, All Might decided to compromise. Both young Ashido and young Midoriya receive MVP for this match for their great teamwork. He knew the greenette wouldn't argue with that. And the man was right. Izuku simply smiled while Mina and the rest of the class cheered for them. However, All Might was a bit concerned when he saw that Izuku didn't watch any of the other battle trials. Instead, Izuku was looking down at the floor with a lost expression. I can't call myself a hero if I hurt people like this. He felt one for all pulse through his body but quickly squished it back down. Maybe I need to use less of this. UA entrance, the next day. Akira looked at Izuku with a worried expression as they walked to school. That was the first red flag, they always flew there. The second red flag was that the greenette had lost his resting smile. And the black-haired teen didn't like that one bit. Izuku, seriously, Akira started, turning his head towards his friend as they walked. What's going on with you? You're not acting like yourself. Izuku for his part just let out a sigh before letting a small smile rest on his face. I should have guessed I wouldn't be able to keep this from you. He shrugged, but I tried anyway. That actually got the black-haired teen to laugh. Well, I'd certainly hope you wouldn't be able to hide much from me. We've been friends for years." He paused before deciding to continue the conversation. "You're like my twin brother, Izuku. Tell me what's wrong so I can help you." The brunette let out a sigh as he lost his smile. "It's about what happened yesterday at the battle trials." He put his arm up as the sparks of one for all began to dance on his skin. "I was so happy after getting this power, but do I even deserve it after what I did to you and Bakugo? I complete. Of course that's what this is about." Akira let out another laugh and shook his head with a smile. "It's always about other people with you." He walked in front of Izuku before placing his hand on his shoulder. "Izuku, you didn't mean to hurt us. You've only ever really fought against me, monsters, and robots. Of course you'll have trouble adjusting to real people." The reasoning there was actually pretty sound. "Just promise me you won't let yourself become a victim of fear again." Izuku heard Akira's words but didn't feel them. "All right then, Akira." But he wasn't about to let his best friend know that after the small speech he just gave him. "Thanks. What are friends for?" Akira cut himself off as they reached the school entrance. PSS off, and saw it surrounded by reporters. Outer Rim revisions. Is it true that All Might is actually a teacher here? Mando memoirs. Is his position at UE why All Might hasn't been patrolling recently? Jetta journalism. Please just let us get one interview with him. Izuku's fake smile disappeared and he let out a groan as float activated. "I'm not in the mood for this today. Jump on." He held his hand out and quickly flew himself and Akira over the gate. "I don't think I'm ever going to get used to them. Trust me, the normal ones don't." A voice suddenly called out behind the two teens. Turning around, they saw it was Aizawa. "I'll go fetch the rest of your classmates out from the vultures. You two get to class." Izuku and Akira bowed their heads. "Yes, Aizawa-sensei," before they both ran off. However, just before Izuku stepped through the doors, he felt Danger Sense scream at him. But when he looked back, he found nothing. Strange. Class 1A. Izuku idly sketched out a number of super moves in his notebook as he sat down at his desk. But his thoughts were on yesterday's events. Most of his sketches came out as one figure punching the other so hard that their body warped around the other's fist. Luckily, Aizawa suddenly walked in, pulling Izuku's attention away from his thoughts and onto his teacher. "Good morning, class." The black-haired man once more greeted them in his flat tone. "I'd usually reprimand any lateness from you all, but I know how the vultures we currently have at our gates can be. You get a pass this once." The class nodded. "Nice. However, I do have notes on your performance in the battle trials yesterday." Aizawa continued, making his students lose their smiles. "Bakugo, Hikaru, you both did fairly well but could have done much better had you stayed together. Bakugo, you shouldn't have left. Hikaru, you should have made him stay or gone with him." Akira and Bakugo both looked down and nodded their heads. "Yes, Aizawa-sensei." Aoyama, Ashido, Ida. Aizawa locked his eyes on said three students. "While you all did well in following your other teammates' plans, I'd advise that you all take more initiative next time." The three students bowed their heads, perfectly in Ida's case. "Yes, sir." And finally, Aizawa looked at currently the three most powerful students in his class, and the most destructive, Midoriya, Todoroki, Yaoyorozu. The three all sat straighter at the mention of their names. "I know that you three are more than capable at keeping collateral damage to a minimal. Please don't make me even mention that topic towards you again." Shoto looked indifferent, Momo looked a bit sheepish, and Izuku looked down in shame. "Yes, Aizawa-sensei. The rest of you obviously made mistakes as well, but those were the ones that stood out the most." Aizawa brought out a box and put it on top of the podium so the class could see. "Now that that's out of the way, we have just one more thing to address before homeroom ends." The class looked at the box with worry and apprehension. What could it be? Is one of us getting expelled? Who? Aizawa's first impression obviously had a lasting effect on them. Haha, and he enjoyed that fact. "You all need to select your class representatives," Aizawa said after letting them stir a bit longer and holding up the box again. "It's to be decided by vote. Write someone's name down and place it in here." Sensei," Kirishima asked, raising his hand. "Do you really think that this is the best way to do this?" Kaminari nodded from in front of him. "Kirishima's right. Wouldn't we just all vote for ourselves?" Aizawa shook his head and sighed in annoyance. "All right, here's the election rules," he started. "No voting for yourself and have it done in the next 5 minutes or else you're all getting detention." With that, he wrapped himself up in his yellow sleeping bag, which again appeared out of nowhere, before throwing himself into the corner. Now, with the threat of possibly losing their break time or time after school, the students all grabbed a strip of paper from Momo and thought quickly about who to vote. The motivation Aizawa gave them was certainly effective as it only took 2 minutes before the results were in. And they certainly surprised a certain pair of teens. "I got 5 votes, Akira asked, looking at the tally Aizawa wrote down on the board. "Are you sure you counted that right, sensei?" Izuku also looked at the tally with a tilted head. "I got 4 votes. His eyes shifted to his classmates to see who would, other than Akira, vote for him. Really? Really? Aizawa nodded, sleeping bag folded over his shoulder and a mug of coffee magically appearing in his hand. Congratulations. Hikaru is class representative and Midoriya is the vice. He immediately walked off after that. Have fun with the rest of your day. And as soon as he left the door, Present Mike slid in, a large smile on his face. Who's ready for English? Everyone inwardly groaned. UA cafeteria. Izuku and Akira sat down in the center of the UA cafeteria with Fumikage and Kirishima, talking about their classes and the former two teenagers' new positions. Mina, Achako, and Momo had joined them as well. It's not like I didn't want to be class rep. Akira started, finishing off his second bowl of spicy ramen in one gulp. I just didn't expect all those votes. I expected one at most from Izuku, said green-haired teen nodded, stacking up his third bowl of katsudon. Same here. I thought I was just going to get one from Akira and have that be it. Kirishima looked at the two with a confused expression, mostly for their statements but also a tiny bit for how much they were eating. You two didn't vote for yourselves. The two teens both shook their heads and pointed to each other simultaneously before speaking in sync. I voted for him. I voted for Akira as well, Achako said, finishing off her matcha. We've actually known each other since before the exam and he's been really great to me and my family, she admitted, cheeks pinker than Mina's. Izuku raised an eyebrow at that and turned to look at Akira. However, Momo spoke before he could ask anything. I voted for Hikaru since he had the highest theoretical exam score in our entire cohort. She almost sounded a bit peeved at that, but it was hard to tell. Anyone capable of surpassing all hero course applicants, both in the regular and recommendation exams, without a quirk passively increasing their intelligence has to be qualified. Akira didn't seem to agree with that but decided not to comment on it. Well, thanks for the vote I guess, Yaoyorozu. He looked around to the other three that hadn't spoken. Any of you vote for me? All three shook their heads before Fumikage spoke. I voted for Midoriya. His quirk came out and nodded furiously. Dark Shadow says he likes him, so I just went off that. Kirishima pumped his fist as he finished his food. I voted for Midori bro as well. He easily had the best fight out of everyone yesterday, totally dominating Bakugo and Hikaru. He suddenly became sheepish and looked at Akira. No offense, Hikaru bro. Akira shook his head and waved the redhead off. None taken, Kiri bro. He tested out the name before nodding with a smile. Yeah, that works. Izuku's smile, however, had faltered at the mention of the battle trials, an action Mina obviously hadn't missed since she scooted on over right next to the greenette and grabbed his arm. Well, I voted for Midori here since he's a good person. He saved me at the entrance exam and carried me through the trials yesterday. The pink-haired girl definitely accomplished whatever she wanted as Izuku turned to her with a soft smile. Thanks, Ashido. His eyes looked right into hers and he had to push down a blush from working its way up to his cheeks. You're giving me too much credit for the trials though. I wouldn't have won without you. Mina also found herself pushing down a blush and instead did her new favorite thing, bopping Izuku on the nose. Oh, that's the other thing. You're a complete sweetie as well. She saw his eyes sparkle and hers did the same. And call me Mina. Izuku didn't miss the teasing smile she had on. Of course he didn't. His eyes were switching between the pink girl's eyes and lips and tried his best to put on one of his own. Alright then, Mina. This time, Mina couldn't push down the blush at the husky tone Izuku spoke with and her teasing smile faltered. What in the world is happening to me? Meanwhile, Akira was watching the interaction with a hidden grin. Just a couple more weeks until the flirting gets to a point where I can openly make fun of it. The teen nodded at his plan and finished off his fifth bowl of food. So, Izuku, how are we gonna do this class representative thing? He asked, turning to his new vice, only to find him staring at the ceiling. No one else at the table missed this. Midoriya, Momo asked, waving her hands in front of him. Is there something the matter? Someone's here, Izuku whispered to himself, unintentionally cutting the onyx-haired girl off as he stood up and focused his eyes on a certain spot of the roof. Upstairs, however, before any of them could ask what the greenette meant. Beep, 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 beep. Yeah, the alarm started going off, and it had some very interesting interactions from the gathered students. All teenagers in the second and third year hero courses stood up immediately, quirks activated and looking around in alarm, while the third year support class had all started aiming giant weapons that seemed to have been activated prior to the alarm. Oh wow. Akira looked around at the reactions from everyone with an impressed look. Damn, Yui really knows how to keep a cool. Level 3 SECRUTIY breach. Level 3 security breach. All students evacuate immediately. A mechanic voice cut off the black-haired teen's thoughts and made him eat them at the same time. Because as soon as those words were announced, everyone lost their shit and panic ensued immediately. All the students that were standing deactivated their quirks and dropped their inventions before running frantically to one of the cafeteria's exits. Wait, no, they're all crowding the same one. Izuku looked to Akira and saw him trying to calm everyone down in vain before floating up to the roof. What in the world is it? Danger Sense had told him there was something just above the roof he was touching, but now he couldn't sense anything at all, not even a tingle. It's like whatever was here disappeared. Not that it mattered right now. What did was the several reporters he had spotted out of his eyes after settling his gaze back downwards. Of course, the media. They have to let us actually kick them off the property now, Akira said as Izuku floated down next him, staring out the window with a glare. This is trespassing. We can definitely have them arrested for that. Izuku really wanted to entertain that line of thought but shook his head. We have to deal with that first. He pointed to the fully gathered body of students crowding the only exit with a short hallway. And I thought our senpai had it under control for a second there. Akira and Izuku walked behind the crowd before standing back to back and putting one arm up to them. Yeah, so did I. I was actually impressed for a second. The black-haired teen admitted as his quirk's energy began to flow out to his arm before hovering above his skin. Mind giving me a bit of a boost? Izuku simply smiled at his friend before letting one for all ran throughout his whole body but not raining in his sparks. No problem, Akira. And with that, they both closed their eyes before opening their hands and letting their power flow out of them while uttering 2 words. Dead calm. The effect was felt as a tingle underneath all the students' skin before the 2 words were uttered, but the power that flowed out of the 2 teens after they spoke washed over them like a tsunami. A golden wave of power forged from the meshing of Izuku and Akira's quirks traveled throughout the entire cafeteria, and any and all panicking ceased, the students feeling compelled to be calm. All at once, the students snapped out of the trance they were put in and they looked as a whole towards the source of the wave to find Izuku and Akira with their hands still out. What was that? It felt like I just ascended to heaven for a moment. Was it those 2 freshies? Akira didn't like the last question he heard, but Izuku pointed out of the window before he could begin to comment. There's no reason to panic. Everyone. His voice was calm, but it carried itself to everyone's ears without difficulty. It's just the reporters from this morning. Yeah, the teachers are already dealing with it, Akira said with a nod, redirecting the focus to the now retreating reporters. No panicking, it's all a false alarm. Help everyone you knocked onto the floor. The students looked out the window and saw that the first year's words rung true. They all at least had the decency to look sheepish at their actions. However, they quickly rectified them as they began to help each other up and safely exit the cafeteria. And as they did, Izuku looked back up to the roof where he felt Danger Sense point him to. What were you? Before floating up to the window and looking for any clues outside. It didn't take long to find one. The famous gate of their school. One known for actually stopping all villain attacks on the school since the institution's founding, was not present. Instead, a large pile of dust laid where it once stood, the once steel wall now being a victim of the wind. Interesting. UA entrance, after school. Well, this has certainly been the most interesting first days I've ever had. Anywhere, really. Izuku thought to himself as he checked the school's gate. Akira had decided to go out with Ochako somewhere, leaving the Greenette by himself to investigate this, and his mind raced with scenarios, the most likely of which was that a villain had attacked the school and used the reporters as a cover. Thinking it over in his head, Izuku knew that was the most probable. Danger Sense had definitely warned him of something before the reporters had gotten in. Whoever it was though had also destroyed the gate as a cover. 2 actions, leaving the gate to dust and getting in and out of the school fast enough that Danger Sense couldn't keep up with it. This meant it was 2 villains, someone with a quirk that let them turn anything to dust and another that could warp. That is certainly a well thought out and scarily impressive deduction, Midoriya. A voice suddenly called out from behind the Greenette, startling him. I must say, while I came to the same conclusion, I didn't expect anyone else to arrive to the same one so fast. Izuku looked behind to find Nezu standing behind him with a chipper smile on his face. Ah, Principal Nezu. The Greenette stood up and wiped the dust off himself before bowing. How are you, sir? The Chimera shut him down by simply raising his paw. No need for such formalities. Midoriya, I believe I caught you describing what you believed happened today. Izuku shifted under the principal's gaze but nodded. Yes, sir, I could sense someone's presence above the center of the cafeteria before the alarms went off today. He started, and guessing that they, whoever they were, destroyed the gate knowing the reporters would cause an alarm as a cover for whatever they were doing. The teen grabbed a handful of the gate dust before letting it fall from his hand. And it had to be 2 people, a warper to get in and out of the school and someone with some sort of disintegration quirk. The smile Nezu had on his face had only grown throughout Izuku's explanation of his theory. It was almost unsettling. A truly wonderful and genius theory, Midoriya, Nezu praised, clapping his hands, and most likely true as well. He sighed as he looked down and shook his head. I must admit, I wish I found you before All Might. A brain such as yours is hard to find. Izuku blushed in embarrassment but bowed his head. Thank you, Principal Nezu. The Chimera simply pet Izuku on his leg. It isn't a problem, young one, he said before shooing the Greenette away. Now stop worrying yourself over this and go home. The staff and I will continue the investigation. All right then. The green-haired teen nodded before activating float and letting the wind carry him off, leaving behind one last wave. Goodbye, Principal Nezu. Nezu waved back and waited all the way until the greenette left his eyesight before he let his smile drop. Someone is trying to invade my school. Thousands of ideas, plans, blueprints, and more stormed in his head before he turned around and began to trek back to his office. They will pay. Thanks for listening story. Subscribe my channel.